Welcome to Billion Whisper, the place where stories break your heart and then put it back together stronger than before. If you are new here, come back into
hit
your
that
life,
subscribe
not as the
button
person
right
you
now,
lost,
because
but as
every
the
single
reason
day
you lost them.
we bring you a
Sarah was
story
standing
that will
at the
make
top
you
of the
feel
big
something
staircase
real.
in a shiny green dress. The light in the room made her dark skin glow like something painted by hand. Her long black hair fell over her shoulders, soft and smooth. She looked calm. She looked strong, but inside she was shaking. Because the man at the bottom of the stairs was staring at her like he had seen a ghost. His name was Adam. He was tall, with a sharp jaw and dark hair, and a black suit that looked like it cost more than Sarah made in a month. His hand was holding a glass of champagne and the glass was trembling. Sarah walked down 2 steps. Adam did not move. He just stared, and then he said her name, not the name she had given the event people. Her real name, the name she had hidden for 5 years. Sarah stopped breathing, because the only person alive who knew that name was dead. She had held his hand when he left, and yet here stood Adam, very much alive, saying her name like it was the only word he had ever truly believed in. If this opening already has your heart beating fast, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Sarah woke up every morning at 5:45. Before the birds, before the coffee shops opened, before the city even decided it was time to start. She would walk to her flower shop on Vellum Street, unlock the old green door, and stand in the dark for a moment. Just her and the flowers, roses, dahlias, white orchids, wildflowers she ordered from a farm 3 hours away because they were her favourite kind of honest. The shop was called Bloom and Bone. She had 2 helpers. Demi was 24 and always had paint on her fingers and laughed at everything. Rowan was 30 and mostly communicated by nodding slowly. Sarah paid them well and remembered their birthdays and made sure there was always good coffee. But she never went out for drinks on Fridays. She never came to parties. She never let anyone get too close. Not because she was mean. She just carried a secret that made closeness feel dangerous. On her left arm, just below the elbow, there was a thin white scar about 4 inches long. She kept it covered always. A silk bracelet in summer, long sleeves in winter. Demi had once said the bracelet was Sarah's signature look. She had no idea it was a shield. That scar was from a night Sarah did not talk about. A night in a different city, with a different name, in a life she had folded up and buried. A man she loved had died that night. Sarah had almost died too, and the fact that she had not was not entirely an accident. That was the part she could never say out loud. She was fine. That was the sentence she used most. Not happy exactly, not fully healed. But fine. The flowers were fine, the shop was fine. The small apartment above the bookshop 3 blocks away was fine. Quiet, safe, small, the kind of life you build when the big life hurts you too much and you decide the small one is enough. She was knee-deep in white flowers one afternoon when an email came in from the event coordinator of the biggest party in the city. Sarah had been hired to do all the flowers for the Cresthaven Business Gala. It was the biggest job she had ever taken. She had been working on it for 3 weeks. The email had the guest list, so she could match flower colours to the seating plan. She almost did not open it, but she wiped her hands and looked at her phone. 3rd name on the VIP list. Adam Voss. Sarah's phone fell out of her hand and hit the table like a small gunshot. Adam Voss did not walk into rooms. He took them over. Not loudly, not rudely. He just had a way of being somewhere that made everything else in that space slightly less important. He was 35. He ran a massive company called Voss Consolidated that operated in 17 countries. He had built it himself, starting with 1 single building at age 22 in a city that did not believe in him. He had turned nothing into something enormous through pure focus and a refusal to be afraid. He was also very funny. Not the silly kind of funny. The sharp kind. The kind that lands so perfectly you are laughing before you realize the joke has also said something true. He used his humor like a tool, to charm people, to win rooms, and sometimes when things got too real, to keep people from getting too close. He had been engaged once. Her name was Lyra. She had died 4 years ago. Adam had not spoken her name in public since her funeral. People who worked with him knew this. Nobody brought her up. Not because he had made a rule about it, but because the one time someone had mentioned her casually at dinner, Adam had gone so completely still that everyone at the table understood without a single word that this was a closed door. He came to the gala in his black suit, white shirt, no tie, carrying the kind of quiet authority that makes people move out of the way before they have even decided to. His right-hand man, Cole, walked half a step behind him as always. Cole handled the details. Adam handled everything else. Adam had come to talk business with Gerald Whitmore, the old rich man whose name was on the building, but something made him stop walking when he saw the flowers. They were stunning, not in a flashy way, in the kind of way where you stop and look and feel something without knowing why. Big arrangements of white peonies, dark dahlias, trailing green leaves, little clusters of wildflowers hidden here and there like the garden, had followed the guests inside. Adam stood in front of one arrangement for 30 full seconds. Cole said quietly, "The florist is doing a final check in the room. Her name is Sarah. Studio called Bloom and Bone." Adam said, "I wasn't going to ask." Cole said, "You were going to stare for another minute and then pretend you hadn't." Adam looked at him. Cole kept his face perfectly blank. Adam said, "Find Whitmore," and walked away. He found Sarah first. She was in the far corner, adjusting a centerpiece with the kind of focus a surgeon has. Her green silk dress caught the light across her dark skin beautifully. Her black hair was over one shoulder. Several people nearby had stopped talking without noticing they had. Adam stopped too, not just because she was beautiful, though he was honest enough with himself to notice that. He stopped because of her hands, the way they moved, careful and certain and completely in conversation with the flowers. Like someone who had learned this thing so deeply, it had become part of how she thought. He had seen hands move like that once before in his life. He told himself this was grief playing tricks. Grief does that. It shows you pieces of the person you lost in strangers. He walked over anyway. "Excuse me," he said. She turned, her dark eyes met his, and they were not similar to eyes he remembered. They were familiar. The way a song is familiar when you have not heard it in years, but your whole body still knows it. Adam's wit, which never failed him completely. He said, "The wildflowers." Sarah blinked. "Sorry?" Third arrangement from the left. "Those wildflowers are from Harrow Farm." Something crossed her face fast, controlled. The kind of expression a careful person makes when they are surprised and determined not to show it. "Most people wouldn't know that," she said. "I'm not most people," Adam said. Then, because he could not entirely help himself, "I've also been told I'm exhausting at parties. You can check with my associate. He's the one pretending to look at his phone by the east door." Sarah glanced at Cole, who was deeply engaged in his phone in the way of a man actively pretending. She looked back at Adam, and despite everything, despite the alarm going off somewhere deep in her chest, despite the name she had read on a guest list, and the phone she had dropped, Sarah almost smiled. "The wildflowers are from Harrow Farm," she confirmed. "I order them specifically, irreplaceable," Adam said quietly. The word carried more weight than a compliment should. Sarah studied him. "Are you here for the gala or for a flower lesson?" "The gala, though I'm rethinking my priorities." "Don't," Sarah said pleasantly. "I don't do consultations at events. You can book an appointment at my studio." "Bloom and Bone," Adam said. "Vellum Street." She went still. He had not asked. He had known. "You looked me up. I looked up the floral contractor for the event." Standard practice. Is it also standard practice to interrogate florists at parties? "Only the ones who order wildflowers from 3 hours away," he said. "It's a very specific circle." She looked at him with those eyes that knew too much. He looked back. He was absolutely certain he would not find what he was afraid he was looking for, because finding it was impossible, and grief does not hand you back what it took from you. Not 4 years later. Not in a ballroom. not in a green dress. "You know," Sarah said, tilting her head, "for someone who admitted he looked me up before walking over, you're doing a very confident impression of casual." "I'm an excellent actor," Adam said. "Are you?" "No," he said, "but I'm a good liar, which is close enough most of the time." Sarah looked at him straight and said, "I don't think that's actually true either." It was the most honest thing anyone had said to Adam in 3 years. He had no answer. The man who always had an answer had nothing. Petra, the event coordinator, appeared and pulled Sarah away. Adam stepped back and watched her go. Across the room, between the tall peony arrangements, he watched Sarah make a young server laugh, and her face in that moment was completely open and warm, lit from somewhere inside. It hit him in the chest like a key in a lock he thought had been sealed forever. He left without speaking to her again. He sat in the back of his car in silence all the way home. Cole did not ask. Cole knew which nights needed quiet. It was only alone in his apartment, jacket off, one untouched glass of whiskey on the counter, that Adam allowed himself to think about what he was afraid to think about. He thought about Lyra. He thought about her scar, thin and white, 4 inches, left inner arm, running slightly diagonal. He had kissed that scar. He had learned it the way you learn something you plan to love forever. He thought about 3 hours ago. Sarah adjusting a centerpiece, her silk bracelet slipping 1 centimeter on her left inner arm. He had looked away immediately. He had said nothing. Now alone he sat and thought, it is not possible, and then, but what if? He did not sleep. At 7 in the morning he called Cole. "I need everything on the owner of Bloom and Bone, legal, thorough, fast, how fast? Yesterday. I know you need to know what happens next. Drop a comment below telling me what you think Sarah should do, and make sure you are subscribed so the next part finds you." Cole's report took 18 hours. The woman running Bloom and Bone called herself Sarah Bloom. She had arrived in Cresthaven 3 years ago from a city called Marin. Before Marin, there was a gap of 14 months with almost no record of her at all, the kind of gap that happens when someone has help disappearing. Before the gap was a woman named Sarah Delane, a botanical illustrator in a city called Vane. No criminal record, no debt, nothing bad on paper. And then, 3.5 years ago, she had effectively stopped existing on paper. Near the end of Cole's report, almost like a footnote, was this. In the city of Vane 3.5 years ago, there had been a fire at a private house. 1 person had died. 1 person had survived and been treated at a hospital. The survivor's name had been removed from public record. The person who had died had been listed as Lyra Delane. Sarah's sister Adam read that word, and the room tilted sideways. He had not known. Lyra had never once mentioned a sister. She had told him she was alone in the world, parents gone, no other family. She had said it simply, and he had believed it completely. He had had no reason not to. Why would she hide a sister? Why would Sarah, who had been in that burning house, build an entirely new life under a new name in a new city? What had happened in Vane, and why did Adam feel, sitting in his quiet apartment at 1 in the morning, that the answers were connected to the night that had broken him? He made an appointment at Bloom and Bone. Corporate flower contract for the Voss Consolidated offices. Cole made the call. Demi, the paint-fingered assistant, was delighted. Sarah was not delighted when she saw the appointment book Tuesday morning. She stood still for a moment, the way she stood still when she was deciding something important. Then she tied on her apron and waited. He arrived exactly on time. He walked in with Cole behind him and looked around at the warm lamp and the flowers and the small botanical prints on the walls with an expression that gave nothing away. "Mr. Voss," Sarah said, "welcome. It suits you," he said, looking around. "This space. It feels like something you built very carefully. All good spaces are careful," she said. "True," he said. "The accidental ones tend to fall apart." It should have been small talk. It was not small talk. Neither of them pretended it was. Demi appeared from the back with a clipboard, sensed the pressure in the room immediately, and found a reason to go back to the back at speed. Sarah walked him through the studio offerings with perfect professional calm. He asked smart questions. She answered them. He made a joke about whether eucalyptus was overused in office buildings, and she said eucalyptus was never the problem. The problem was people who thought a plant could do the work of actual thought, and he laughed. A real laugh, not a social one. For a moment he looked younger and less armoured and more real. They were standing near the work table, closer than a business meeting required, when he said quietly, "Tell me about Harrow Farm. I told you at the gala. I order wildflowers from them because they're irreplaceable," he said. "You didn't finish the sentence. Why those specific flowers?" A pause. "They grow in a particular soil. The colours come out more honest than anything grown closer to the city." "More honest," he repeated. "Some colours try too hard," Sarah said. "These don't." Adam was quiet a moment, then Lyra used to say that. The name hit Sarah like a hand on her shoulder in the dark. She did not flinch. She had practiced not flinching for 3 years, and she was very good at it. But something moved in her eyes and he saw it. She knew he saw it. The space between them changed completely. "My fiancée," he said, watching her carefully. "She died 4 years ago. Her name was Lyra." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, perfectly level voice. "That's a terrible thing to lose." She loved wildflowers, Adam said, specifically from Harrow Farm. She used to drive out there herself. Said the colours were more honest. Sarah said nothing. She was counting flowers in her head the way she counted when she needed to stay calm. "I know who you are," Adam said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the whole room. "I know your real name. I know Lyra was your sister. I know you were there the night she died." He stopped. "Then, what I don't know is why you've been hiding ever since. And I think you owe me that, Sarah, because I loved her, and whatever happened that night destroyed us both, and I have been carrying it alone for 4 years. The studio went silent. Outside, a car passed. The flowers seemed to hold still. Sarah looked at this man. His eyes were not cold or accusing. They were cracked open. The expression of someone who has been strong for too long, and the effort is finally showing through. She looked at him and thought about every year of silence and every reason she had been silent, and the one reason above all others she had never been able to speak. She reached up. She slid the silk bracelet off her left arm. She held her arm out toward him, inner wrist up, the thin white scar visible under the warm lamp. Adam looked at the scar. His jaw got tight. He closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, she saw grief, old and enormous and still going, the kind you learn to walk with because it never fully leaves. "She had one," he said. "Same place." "I know," Sarah said, "because I was there when she got it. Everything just changed. Share this story right now with one person who loves a good romance, and comment below whether you saw that coming." The truth came out slowly, not in a rush. Sarah spoke the way she arranged flowers. Each piece placed carefully, nothing dropped carelessly on the table. She told him about growing up with Lyra in a small house outside Vane. Their parents had died when Sarah was 9 and Lyra was 7. An aunt had raised them. They had been close the way sisters are when the world outside feels unreliable, tightly, practically, without needing many words. She told him that Lyra had been smart and funny and warm, and that from the age of 19, Lyra had been with a man named Marcus Feld, who was none of the things Lyra believed he was. Adam's face stayed very still when he heard that name. He let Sarah keep talking. Marcus had slowly cut Lyra off from Sarah. He did it quietly over 2 years, in ways so small that Lyra did not notice her world getting smaller until it already was. When Sarah tried to step in, when she showed up at Lyra's apartment and said the things a sister says when she watches someone she loves disappear, Marcus made sure Lyra saw it as Sarah being jealous, as Sarah not wanting her to be happy. There had been a whole year when the sisters did not speak. The worst year of Sarah's life until the next one. Then Lyra called. From a number Sarah did not know. Late on a Tuesday night, speaking fast and quietly. She had a plan. She needed Sarah to come to the house in Vane on a specific night when Marcus would be away. They would get Lyra's things. They would leave. Sarah drove 4 hours without sleeping. She arrived. Lyra was there. The plan was moving. Marcus came back early. What happened in the next hour Sarah had never described to anyone, not to therapists, not to the kind woman at the shelter who offered to listen. She described it now to Adam in the quiet studio, her voice steady and her hands flat on the work table. Marcus had set fire to the back of the house deliberately, while both women were inside. Sarah had gotten out through the front window. Lyra had not made it in time. The scar on Sarah's arm was from the glass she had broken to get through. Marcus had disappeared that night. He had money and contacts and a 3-year head start on Sarah's fear. She had spent the first year after the fire certain he was looking for her, that he knew she had survived, that she was the only living witness to what he had done. She had changed her name, moved again, built Bloom and Bone in Cresthaven and made it beautiful and made it quiet and had not allowed herself to look back. She had not known about Adam. Lyra had never mentioned him. Now Sarah understood why. Lyra had kept them separate on purpose. Adam in one part of her life, Sarah in another, holding both, showing neither the whole picture, the way a person protects the things they love most when they know danger is close. When Sarah finished, the studio was very quiet. Adam was silent for a long time. She watched him process it. His jaw worked, his hands pressed flat on the work table. He was looking somewhere past her at something she could not see. "She never told me she had a sister," he said finally. "I know. She told me she was alone. She thought it was safer," Sarah said softly. "If Marcus didn't know she had a sister, you couldn't be used against her, and neither could I." She paused. "She was protecting me. Even then, even when I didn't know." Adam turned away for a moment. His shoulders carried something visible. Sarah had a sudden and strong urge to put her hand on his back and just hold it steady. She didn't. She waited. When he turned back, his face was different, still composed. He was too practiced to lose that entirely, but something underneath it was showing. The man under the suit. The one who had loved her sister and lost her, and spent 4 years being sharp and funny and completely alone inside it. "Marcus Feld," he said. "Yes, I know that name," Adam said. 3 years ago, one of my companies nearly bought a firm he had money in. We pulled out when the background check got complicated. I didn't know then what he stopped. He's not hiding, Sarah. He's operating. He runs a private security company in Dunmore, 200 miles north. He's comfortable." Sarah felt the blood leave her face. "He doesn't know where you are," Adam said quickly. "I'm sure of that, but he didn't disappear. He just moved on." The word comfortable sat between them like something dropped from a great height. Sarah had spent 3 years afraid of a man who was comfortable. She had built her whole quiet life around fear of a man who was out there living normally. The anger that moved through her then was so clean and complete it clarified everything, the years of hiding, the half-life she had been living. She looked at Adam and said, in a voice missing its usual gentleness, "I want him to face what he did." Adam looked at her, really looked at her dark skin and her high cheekbones and her long black hair and her eyes that were not hiding anything anymore. He saw the grief in them and the anger and the love for Lyra, stubborn and surviving. He saw the woman who had driven 4 hours on no sleep to save her sister and climbed out a burning window and spent 3 years being afraid and kept building beautiful things anyway, every single day, refusing to disappear completely. He said, "So do I." Then because he was Adam and could not entirely help himself, he said, "I happen to know several people in positions where justice becomes significantly more achievable than average. 2 good lawyers, 1 very motivated investigator, and a federal contact who owes me a favor of real weight." He paused. "I also make excellent coffee if this is going to be a long conversation." Sarah stared at him. "That last part was a joke," he said. "The coffee is genuinely terrible. Cole handles coffee. Cole is in the car." And Sarah laughed, not a polite laugh, a real one, from somewhere deep and unguarded, the kind she had almost forgotten how to make. Adam watched it happen with an expression so open, She did not think he knew it was on his face. When her laugh settled, he was still watching her, and his face held something enormous that neither of them named yet, not yet. What came next was not simple. Sarah had not expected simple and would have been suspicious of it. Adam moved with the purposeful focus that defined everything he did, but he checked with her at every step. This surprised her. He did not assume, he asked. He brought in an attorney named Claire Vanden, calm and sharp, who specialized in helping survivors of abuse. She met with Sarah twice before Sarah decided she trusted her. Claire said Sarah's testimony, combined with the right forensic review of the fire, was strong enough to reopen the case as arson and attempted murder. The federal investigator Adam had mentioned, a woman named Inspector Hargrove, firm and precise, agreed when she reviewed it. Marcus Feld, comfortable in Dunmore, did not stay comfortable long. During the weeks while the legal case gathered strength, Adam came to bloom and bone. Not every day, not pushy, but regularly, in the way he did everything, with clear intention. He came in the late afternoons when the shop was quietest, sometimes with a question about the office flowers, sometimes with no stated reason. Sarah would make room at the work table and they would talk. Sometimes they talked about Lyra, carefully, slowly, like handling something precious. They shared the pieces they each held separately and built between them a fuller picture of a woman they had both loved. It hurt. It also helped the way setting a broken bone helps. Necessary pain with healing on the other side. They talked about other things too. Adam was genuinely curious about everything, not in a polite fake way, but in the way of someone who actually finds the world interesting and finds Sarah specifically interesting. He asked about her work like he meant to understand it. She asked about his in the same way, not the usual questions about how big or how successful. She asked about the first building he ever bought and what it felt like. What happened the first time a deal he was certain about fell apart? Whether he missed the early days when the stakes were smaller. He answered honestly. She could always tell because when Adam was truly honest, the humor dropped away and he became direct and a little bit vulnerable and more real than any version of himself he showed in public. He made her laugh regularly. His humor was built like her flower arrangements, every piece supporting the next, nothing wasted. He knew exactly when to be funny and when to be quiet. She started to look forward to the late afternoons. She noticed when he was not there. One evening he arrived after closing. Demi and Rowan had gone. The studio was warm and quiet and hers. He had walked from a meeting. She opened the door and let him in without asking questions and made actual coffee. He noted that her coffee machine was very good, which meant Cole was no longer the deciding factor in whether he visited, which made her laugh. They sat at the work table in the lamplight among the flowers, and he told her the small, real things about Lyra. How she burned the edges of everything she toasted and refused to admit it was a problem. How she laughed at her own jokes before she finished telling them. How she had kept people she loved in separate rooms of herself, giving each one a piece but never the whole picture. She never stopped loving you, Sarah said quietly. I want you to know that. The year we didn't speak, that was Marcus, not her. When she called me that last night, she mentioned you by name. She was happy about you. She wanted to introduce us properly after, when it was over. Adam was quiet for a long time. Outside, the city went about its evening. A couple walked past laughing. A bicycle bell rang somewhere. She would have liked you, he said finally. I mean, she already loved you. But she would have liked who you became. This, he looked at the studio, the flowers, the small warm world Sarah had built. She would have stood here and she would have been so proud. Sarah's eyes filled. She did not let herself cry. Old habit. But she let her eyes fill and she did not look away from him, and he did not look away from her and did not say anything to fix it, which was exactly right. This was what it felt like when someone understood the grammar of grief without needing it explained. His hand was near hers on the table, not touching. Just there, she turned her hand over, palm up. He placed his over it, just that. His thumb moved once across her knuckles. They sat in the lamplight among the flowers, and neither of them spoke and neither of them moved, and the quiet between them was not empty. It was full. It was Marcus who forced the final moment. Men like him always do. Not because they are powerful, but because losing power makes them desperate. He hired someone through his security firm contacts. A large, calm man who showed up at Bloom and Bone on a Wednesday morning when Demi was out on a delivery and Rowan had called in sick and Sarah was alone. The man walked in and placed his hands on Sarah's work table and told her in a steady voice that the wisest thing she could do for her continued well-being was to reconsider cooperating with any investigations. Sarah looked at his hands on her work table. She looked at the flowers around her. She thought about Lyra. She thought about 3 years of being afraid. She thought about being 9 years old and losing her parents and being 7-year-old Lyra's big sister and the thing that means, the forever responsibility of it, the love that does not have an off switch. She thought about a burning house and a broken window and climbing through it alone. She said calmly, "Please take your hands off my work table." He was still deciding how to respond when the green door opened and Adam walked in. He read the room in 1 second. Something shifted in his face. Not the charming Adam, not the funny Adam. Something older and quieter and significantly more serious. He crossed the studio in 5 steps and said to the man very quietly, "You have 30 seconds to leave. 2 things are working in your favor right now. First, the cameras on this street have been recording since you arrived, and your employer's face is more useful in that footage than yours. Second, I am in a patient mood today. Both of those advantages expire in 30 seconds. I would use them." The man left. Sarah stood in the middle of her studio and breathed. Adam turned to her. All of it dropped away. The authority, the danger, the controlled calm, and he was just Adam. Her Adam. Looking at her with an expression so unguarded it felt like a privilege to see it. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she said, and because she was done with half-truths, "No, but I will be." He crossed the studio. He stood close, closer than the work table evenings, closer than any of the careful distances they had been keeping, while they built something neither of them had named yet. She looked up at him, and he looked at her. Her dark skin and her long black hair and her full lips and her eyes that had stopped hiding anything. And he looked the way he had looked at the flowers the night they met, completely, without the smirk, without the armor, just a man who had finally run out of clever things to say because what he was feeling was too big for a joke. "Sarah," he said. "Don't make a joke," she said. "I wasn't going to," he said. "Good, I've run out," he said quietly. "The jokes. I don't have any left, and I think that means it's real." Sarah looked at this man who had made her laugh and made her think and sat with her in grief and stood between her and danger without being asked to. She looked at him and said, "It's real." He touched her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone slowly. The tenderness in it was so complete and unguarded that her breath caught in her throat. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his jaw. His arms came around her. In the warm lamplight of Bloom and Bone, surrounded by flowers she had grown a life among, Sarah held on and was held, and the fear that had lived in her chest for 3 years did something she had not expected. It got smaller. It made room. Marcus Feld was convicted 14 months later. Arson, attempted murder, and more charges that came out as the investigation grew. Inspector Hargrove described the sentence in her closing notes as appropriate to the evidence. Sarah was in the courtroom the day the verdict was read. Adam sat beside her. When the judge's words landed, Sarah closed her eyes and breathed the way you breathe when something long and heavy is finally set down. She felt Adam's hand find hers in the quiet. She held it. They did not rush into anything after that. Neither of them was the rushing type. They were both too careful, too honest, too aware of what real things cost to get them wrong by moving too fast. What they did was continue. The late afternoons continued. The work table conversations continued. Then evenings, then mornings. Two people who had each built their lives around careful walls, slowly, thoughtfully, putting doors in those walls instead. Demi told Rowan one morning that Sarah seemed different. Rowan nodded once. Demi said she seemed lighter. Rowan nodded again. Neither of them said anything to Sarah because some things are most themselves when they are not over-examined. One Saturday in early spring, Sarah drove out to Harrow Farm by herself. 3 hours north, early morning, radio on, the road mostly empty. Adam had offered to come. She had said she needed this one alone. He had understood without needing her to explain, which was one of the many things she had learned about him. He did not require explanation for things that were simply true. She walked through the fields. The wildflowers were everything they had always been. Honest colours, not trying too hard, growing in soil that gave them something the cultivated flowers did not have. She stood among them for a long time and thought about Lyra, who had stood in this same light, who had called these same colours honest, who had loved a man named Adam and a sister named Sarah, and had kept them in separate rooms trying to protect them both, not knowing that one day those two people would find each other because of her. Because of wildflowers, because of a scar, Sarah picked a small bunch, the ones Lyra had loved, the ones that had started a conversation in a ballroom with a man who had run out of jokes. She drove home. She went to Bloom and Bone. She put the flowers in water. She turned on the warm lamp. She started to work. Adam arrived in the late afternoon, exactly when she knew he would. Here is what this story wants you to know. Some loves do not ask you to forget the wound. They ask you to let someone sit with you while it heals. They ask you to stop making yourself invisible, to let someone see you. Your scars and your secrets and your early mornings and your flowers and your silk bracelet and your beautiful hands and all the specific things that make you exactly you, and to let them choose you anyway, all of you, not the safe version, the real one, that is the whole of the ask. It sounds simple, it is the hardest thing there is, because it means trusting that this time the loving will not cost everything. It means being brave enough to find out. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you find out that it was worth it, that the door you were most afraid to open leads somewhere warm, that the person on the other side has been carrying something very similar to what you have been carrying, and that two people who have each been quietly surviving can, if they choose it, build something together that is better than surviving, something honest-coloured, unhurried, rooted. If this story moved something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe for a brand new story every single day. And if you want to know what happened to Sarah and Adam after this, drop a comment below saying more, and I just might continue their story.